Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi and a very good morning. Can you hear me well?
Yes, Prof, we can hear you.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay, so I will be touching on the introduction to systematic review and methodology, right? This is the topic that has been requested by the department to cover on the systematic review. I congratulate to all the participants who have attended this workshop, meaning you have shown some interest on how or to understand what is systematic review is about. Right? Okay. This is the hierarchy of research evidence, right? Okay, you are aware that there are many types of studies, and it can start with expert's opinion, background information, and then you go to case series, case report, and then you go to the case control studies, cohort studies, randomized control trials, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis. So meta-analysis is actually situated at the top of the pyramid to show that is the best. It has got the best evidence for a research. So is systematic review similar to meta-analysis? Okay. Systematic review can be performed with or without the meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is a component of a systematic review. I am trying to remove this thing. I mean, there's some view which okay. So systematic review is a review of studies in which the evidence has been systematically searched for, studied, assessed, and summarized according to the predetermined criteria. Whereas for the meta-analysis, as the name implies, it is the statistical technique that estimates an average or common effect and express this quantitatively. That's why when we perform a systematic review and meta-analysis, we collect all the studies and we try to find out what is the cumulative effect estimate. Okay, this cumulative effect estimate is referring to the average or the common effect of all the included studies in the review to show whether it is actually favoring the interventions or favoring the control in the case where you perform a review for interventional studies, because reviews can be performed on interventional studies as well as on observational studies, but of course due to the different designs, okay, because the intervention studies and observation studies, the way they are implemented are different, therefore the assessment of the studies are also different. When you perform a systematic review without the meta-analysis, you will miss these advantages of the meta-analysis, that is quantifying the treatment effect and the uncertainties, meaning that what is the confidence interval? I mean, you have the 95% confidence interval. You mean how much or how sure are you that the results are true, right? That is the uncertainty level. And you will also be able to know what is the power, the precision. You'll be able to explore the differences between the studies, settle the controversies from the conflicting studies, and generate new hypotheses. These are under the meta-analysis. If you perform the systematic review without the meta-analysis, you will not be able to get these benefits. But sometimes, having said that, you perform systematic review, you cannot proceed with meta-analysis because of the very heterogeneity of the studies. Okay, heterogeneity of the studies or very few studies, you cannot perform the meta-analysis where you cannot group the studies into similar groups and you are able to perform the meta-analysis, and that is why some review they will stop only up to systematic review only. So these are the steps for a review. There are 9 steps. The first 7 are the for systematic review, and the additional 2 is for the meta-analysis. Okay, when you want to perform a meta-analysis, you have to do a systematic review first, where you need to define the questions. You have to plan the eligibility criteria. That is what is the inclusion and the exclusion criteria. You need to plan the methods of how you want to conduct the review. You have to search for the studies. There are method technique on how to do the searching. You need to apply the eligibility criteria for all the included studies. You collect the data and you have to assess the studies for the risk of bias or the quality. So this is the steps or the things that you need to have in a systematic review. Okay, so the ideal systematic review, you need to have a prisma, right? The prisma is a compulsory where it will shows what how you perform the search, the systematic search, and you have to include that in the systematic review, and you need to also assess the risk of bias or the quality of the included studies. Okay, these are the 2 things that you need to have in a systematic review, right? Okay. Prospero. What is Prospero? Prospero is an international database of prospectively registered systematic review in health and social care, meaning that when you want to perform a systematic review with or without a meta-analysis, you will need to register your review in Prospero. Okay, you need to register and then you will publish your protocol in the Prospero. But this protocol is not considered a publication, right? You will the protocol can be considered as a publication when it is published in other journals, for example Cochrane protocols, or you publish your protocols in the BMJ, so that is considered as a publication, but not in a Prospero. Prospero is just a registry where you register and you get the registration number, and you will include that registration number in your publication, right? If you publish Cochrane protocols, these Cochrane protocols will be automatically uploaded in the Prospero. This is what the interface that you will see when you go into Prospero. Okay. Okay. So the requirements for registration, must have a full protocol, but for registration in Prospero, it does not require a detailed protocol. The information needed is only minimal. All right, and you must submit before the data extraction commences. Why? Because when you do a review, you are not sure whether you are able to complete the review, right? So for that sense, you need to do some background work to see whether you are able to complete. So that is why it says before the data extraction. When we want to plan for a review, we need to do some literature search. Literature search first whether it is doable or not. Okay, where it is doable, when we have enough number of papers, we are confident that we can complete the review, then only we will register in Prospero. Okay, and Prospero does not accept scoping reviews or literary reviews, only there is narrative reviews and critical appraisals. So these are the types of write-up that is not um, that does not require registration in Prospero. So what is the advantage of um, registering a Prospero because we do not want to duplicate. Okay, we have to make sure that our review do not duplicate others or the method do not duplicate, and we want to see whether when was the last review taken and whether it has been completed or not, and what is the method they have applied, and we have to make sure that the similar reviews were not conducted concurrently, because when once we publish you will have similar reviews and then you will have problems with publication. Okay. So I'm going into systematic reviews for interventional studies. Intervention studies mean you have two groups and it assess the effectiveness of a treatment or an intervention or a procedure. Why two groups? We have the intervention group and we have the control group because we want to know whether the treatment, whether the procedure, whether the intervention is better than the control group. That can be the standard treatment, the placebo, or whatever, right? So the systematic review will answer these type of questions. Okay. This is the pico format. We have the population intervention comparison and outcomes. Okay, so you know the population is who are the population you are interested in. So you have to make sure when you plan, when you want to do the outline to perform a review, what are the population you are interested in? What is the intervention or the procedures? What is the comparator, the comparison to what the intervention to be compared with? And what are the outcomes that are relevant to the intervention. It is always important for you to list the important outcomes that are relevant to the intervention. It is just not any outcomes, but outcomes that are relevant to the intervention. Okay. So for the eligibility criteria that performs, that acts or that forms the inclusion and exclusion criteria, there are the types of studies, types of participants, and types of interventions. Okay, so for the interventional study, you have to make sure the study designs that you want to include, whether it can be randomized control trials, it can be whether you want to include quasi randomization or not, although we know quasi randomization is not a true RCTs, okay, and whether you want to include the studies with high risk of bias, so whether there's any restrictions to the crossover design. So these are the things that you need to outline for the types of studies for your review. Okay, the participants, whether they are limited for any disease or conditions of interest, any restrictions with regard to the diagnosis, age groups, and settings, right? And the types of interventions, this is where you need to describe about your intervention as well as the comparator for the dosage, maybe the frequency, the intensity, or the duration, okay, whether high dose or low dose or regardless of the dosage. This is where you need to spell out or you need to explain about the intervention. And search strategy, I'll just go briefly through this because our next presenter will go into detail into the search strategy. All right, when you want to do the search strategy, you need to outline in your protocol what are the database or bibliographic database that you will use relevant to your topic, the dates and periods of search, meaning that do you have any constraints to the change in the intervention, to the change in the treatment? So that's why you need to have the start period, and the end period. If there is no change intervention, I might as well advise you to not have any limit to the start period. Any constraints to the language? Do you limit your included studies only to the English publication only, or do you plan to translate other publications? And the search terms can be your text words or your mesh terms. So this is where you need to identify what are the text words or the mesh terms you are going to use, right? So for interventional studies, okay, The search strategy will focus on the participants' intervention and study design only. All right. So in your search strategy, you have to write what are the participants and what are the interventions and what are the study designs that you want to include. Because when we do not limit according to the designs, we include all the observational studies. All right. So you know that the number of observation studies are very high, so you want to increase the specificity of your search, so you need to limit by the study design. Okay. Turning concept into search terms, we aim for the high sensitivity, meaning that we want to find as much as possible all the relevant studies, and we want to which lead to lower precision, right? But we also do not want to include too much of irrelevant studies. Okay, so we need to have the balance between the risk of missing something and the cost of having to screen through more research results. Okay, so you have to use both the text words and the controlled vocabulary, and preliminary searching may help test your strategy. You do a prelim search and see whether the words that you have chosen is correct or not. Okay, you can choose one database and do a prelim search. Then with that you can identify what are your search terms, and that search terms can be applied to the other databases, because each database has got their own specific methods of how you want to apply your search strategy. Okay, the strategies must be translated for every database or interface. So what are the text words? Text words are words that appear in the title and abstract of a record. Okay, that are text words. It includes synonyms, related terms, opposites, international terms, and alternative spellings, the US and UK spellings, the plurals or singular. Okay, so these are the text words. Right, so you need to have the variations of these words. Okay, for example, brain injury, head injury, skull fracture, it may relate to the same thing, the same in the same context that you want, right? And you can also replace the variations of the word with truncation and wildcards with the use of asterisk, dollar sign, or question mark. For example, uh, child, okay, child, and use the asterisk, so it represents children. Okay, protects with asterisk, so it represents protective protection. Okay, these are the truncation and wildcards, right? Sometimes use a slash, right? Okay, but you have to be careful also. For some words, the first few letters of a word may also represent other meaning. For example, car, it can represent cars, but it can also represent carcinoma. Okay. Proximity operators, for example, near, next, adjacent. Okay, for example, liver adjacent 3 cancer, you can have adjacent 3 or adjacent 6. Okay, so it will identify all the adjacent 3 or 6 words within the liver and the cancer. So this is the proximity operators. Control vocabulary. We are familiar with mesh terms because we use Medline. Okay, if we were to use Embase, they call it as M3, but we do not subscribe to Embase, so M3 is not that familiar to us. Okay, so the use of mesh term is actually very good because it can identify one word with multiple meanings. Okay, because these are done by the indexes. Okay, they identify one term that represents a similar meaning of a context. Okay, but sometimes because the indexes are not the subject experts, they can include other meanings as well. That's why when you submit your paper to journals, right, you are required to have some words that represents your study. So when you do not describe your study very well, so this might give a different meaning for others when they perform their search. Okay. So Boolean operators are the letters or, and, or not, right? So when we use or, we want when we want to combine the concepts. Okay, what are the concepts just now? The concepts are the population, intervention, and study design that are concepts. Okay, so when you want to combine the population and the intervention concept, you will use or, meaning that you will combine both or, right? Okay. Uh, okay. When we want to narrow the search, we use the and. Okay. But how actually we want to use and or, right? Within a concept, because you want to expand the search, we will use or. Okay. For each concept, we will use or. Okay, you can see here for the population, this is referring to bicycle and cycling. They use or, the different terms with or, and for the intervention as well, helmet or head protective device. So within a concept, you use or, but between a concept, you use the and, right? Trial selection. Okay. In the trial selection, you will make use of the Prisma 2020 flow diagram, right? Previously, it was Prisma 2008 flow diagram. Prisma 2020 was published in 2021. Okay, so you will have to use the Prisma 2020, or else you will need to update or redo your Prisma flowchart. Okay, so there are in Prisma 2020, there are 4 types of Prisma that are available. So you have to actually make sure which one is more suitable for your review. Okay, whether it is a new review, whether it is an update review, so you need to check. So, okay, you will identify the method used to apply the selection criteria. You review all the titles and abstract, right? And you will exclude the trials that do not fulfill the eligibility criteria and evaluate the remaining trials in full text. When we look at this Prisma 2020, it first start with records identified from database and registries. Okay, so you will see, okay, how from databases, how many records, and for registries, how many records. Okay, and after that you will records removed before screening, duplicate records removed, records marked as ineligible, records removed for other reasons. So this one can be done by the software. It will remove the duplicates and so on. Okay, from that, you will get the number of how many records to screen. Okay. At this level, you will screen you will screen your records based on the titles and abstract alone, and you will exclude those who do not fulfill your eligibility criteria. Okay. After that, you will sort for retrieval, meaning that you will search the full text. Okay, when you search the full text, you might or might not get the full text. So that's why you have another box here, reports not retrieved. Okay, so after that, from the full text, you will assess the eligibility, right? Here, eligibility is assessed based on the full text, meaning that you have to read the full text, and then after that, you have to exclude the records or reports which do not fulfill the eligibility, and you need to also write down the reason for the exclusion. For example, reason 1, how many records? Reason 2, how many records? Reason 3, how many records? Here it requires detailed explanation of the reason for exclusion. Okay, after the exclusion, you get the studies included in reviews and reports of included studies. So what is the difference between studies and reports? one study might have 2 reports, 3 reports, and so on. So the number of reports might be more than the number of studies. Okay. So how will you manage with um, one study that have more number of records? So you need to refer to only one primary records. Okay. For example, you have 20 records and it was actually from 15 studies, you will only cite for 15 studies, not for the 20 studies, because the remaining, it will refer to the primary record. Okay. Data extraction is the method used to extract or obtain the data. This is the data extraction method that you need to describe in your protocol, or you need to apply. You will need to explain how you want to do it, right? And for a review, starting from the literature, data extraction, quality assessment, they are done by a minimum of 2 reviewers. Okay. So why? Because you need to counter check. The other person will need to check whether the data extraction, whether the assessment is correct or not. If there are disagreement between the first 2 reviewers, so they must have a consensus, um, or whether to include or to exclude, or what they plan to do for that record, right? If they were unable to get a consensus, then they will need a third author to give the judgment. Okay. So you will outline how you want to do the data extraction, right? What are the data that you want to extract? And in the case that the records are incomplete, which is very common, and you will also state in your methods how you want to deal with it. Do you want to contact the authors? What do you plan to do? Okay. Recommended tool for new Cochrane reviews. Okay. So for interventional studies, we have ROB2, Risk of Bias Assessment 2, which is currently in use. Okay, they have 5 sets of bias domains. All are mandatory. You have the randomization process, deviation from intended interventions, missing outcome data, measurement of the outcome, and selection of the reported results. Okay, every year I saw that there are some changes in the method of a review. Okay, every time when I did talk on reviews, I saw there are changes. Sometimes there are changes in terms of the use of tool for judgment, the use of tool for selection. So here I have actually introduced the latest method of doing a review for interventional studies. Okay. Previously, we performed the ROB1. We call it as ROB only, right? Now we are using the ROB2 and the Robins for the interventional study. Okay. For the ROB2, for each outcome, you have the risk of bias assessment. For the specific result, you specify the results being assessed, specify the effect of interest, list sources of information, answer signaling questions, judge risk of bias for each domain, judge the overall risk of bias for the result. They have actually, in ROB2, specify or describe each risk, how you need to assess them. Okay, in ROB, the previous ROB, it is quite general, but in ROB2, they have actually detailed out to assist the reviewers to make their judgment. So they have also signaling questions to increase the transparency, whether it is yes, probably no, no, or no information. And when you write your judgment, you need to support your judgment with evidence or quotes from the paper, or you need to also add the comment based on the overall assessment for that item. Okay, you cannot just simply write yes, probably yes. No, you have to include your support for your judgment from the paper. Okay, so based on this, you will assess whether it is low risk, some concerns, or high risk of bias. Okay, this would make it much clearer. For example, there are 5 domains, right? So there are 5 domains, and then you have answered the items for each. Under each domain there are items and signaling questions, and this is the assessment based on the yes, probably no, no, and no information. So you come up with either low, 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 whatever. It depends, because actually in the assessment it has written what you need to choose. Sometimes it is yes and probably yes as low, sometimes as no as low. So it depends on how the items or questions being asked. All right. This is based on each domain. Okay, for example, here, where you have all the domains as low risk of bias, what do you think the overall domain might be? The overall risk of bias for that paper might be? Because at the end you need to conclude whether it is low risk, I mean some concern, or high risk, right? Whether to include, I mean, or how you want to analyze, you want to analyze it separately. Okay, so you need to come out with the overall judgment based on the domains. Okay, so sometimes it is a mixture of low, some concerns, and some concerns, or low and high risk of bias, or a mixture of a high, low, and some concerns, or most of it are some concerns and low risk of bias. So how do you plan to assess the overall risk of bias? Right. So these are the examples how you can assess the overall risk. If you have all as low risk, in all domains as low risk, you can say the overall as the low risk of bias. When you have a mixture of some concerns and low, it is some concerns. When you have low and high, it is always as a high risk of bias. When if you have a mixture, it always goes to a high risk of bias, because when you want to include, or you want to have a definite conclusion about a study, you need to be sure. You need to be sure of the results. You need to be sure of the method. You need to be sure that the study has got low risk of bias. When it has got some uncertainties there, and a mixture of, some part is low and some part is high, is you always go to the high risk of bias for that study. Okay? So for the risk of bias, you will use the risk of bias.info. This is available online. You just click risk of bias tools. So we have the ROB tool and Robin's eye tool here. So these are the interface of how we are going to do the risk of bias. We no longer do the risk of bias assessment in referment, because those in referment are using the ROB only. Okay, so for the ROB tool and Robin's eye, they will be utilizing the risk of bias info that all right. We call it as rockvis. Okay, so when you want to go in details, you can click on the link, so it will bring you to the explanation of how to do the assessment. For the ROB's eyes, there is of bias for interventional study, non uh, not randomized, so you will use the Robbins I. If it is randomized, you use the Robbins 2. Okay. When you do the assessment, you still get the visualization tool, the traffic light. Yeah, we call it, this is a traffic light with all the colors, the yellow, red, and green. Okay, so the green indicates the low risk, the red indicates the high risk of bias, and The yellow one indicates some concerns. So when you include all the data in the rod base, you will come up with this type of figure. Basically, what we'll ask in the assessment is based on the selection bias, performance bias, detection bias, attrition bias, and reporting bias. These are the core knowledge that you need to understand to make the assessment, right? You have the, because these are all related to interventional studies, right? Okay. So for selection bias is what? Is the differences, systematic differences between baseline characteristics. Because before you perform an intervention study, you have the intervention and control group at baseline. So whether there is any selection bias at baseline, okay, and these are contributed by the sequence duration and the allocation concealment. Whereas for the performance bias, is the differences in the care or in the exposure to factors that is related to the blinding of participants and personnel. And for detection bias, who did the assessment of the outcome, who performed, how it is performed. And this gives rise to the blinding of outcome assessment, whether it is affected or not. Okay? Attrition bias describes the withdrawals from the study. Okay? And this actually assess whether the outcome data whether it's incomplete or incomplete, whether there's any attrition bias or not. Reporting bias is quite difficult to see because you need to read the papers carefully from the methods and the results. And if there is a protocol, you need to refer to the protocol, okay? Because you want to know whether there is any difference between the reported and the unreported findings. And this is the selective outcome reporting. Okay. The random sequence generation occurs at the start. It avoids selection bias. It determines the random order of assigning people. It is a randomization. Okay, randomization and random sampling is different. Okay, randomization and random sampling are two different things. Okay, randomization is assigning people into intervention and control group. Okay, randomization is involved in RCT. Okay, so why you perform randomization? It is to avoid the systematic differences between the groups at baseline. Okay? So that um, we are able to control the known and the unknown confounders. So when you read a paper, you can actually detect, alright, when the paper report that the method of randomization is done by a random number table or computer random number generator. This can be used now, right? Stratified blot randomization, implementation, this is all considered as low risk, okay? But when it uses a quasi-randomization or non-random, which is common in controlled clinical trials, it is a high risk of bias. Allocation concealment. Allocation concealment is when allocation concealment is no one can predict which group they will be allocated to. Okay, there are methods to conceal whether you are in the intervention or you are in the control group. For example, here, when you apply the central allocation, the phone, the web, or the pharmacy, or the sequentially numbered opaque envelopes, okay, identified similar drug containers, these are low risk. But when you apply random sequence that are known to the staff or envelopes or packaging without the safeguards, these are the high risk. Okay, the high risk. Because it is predictable. Um, we know the group to which the participant will be in. Blinding of participants and personnel, it is to avoid the performance bias because when the care provider or the participants are aware they were intervention or the control group, so they will lead to different ways of interaction and different expectation, and this will changes in the outcome results. Okay, so all these avoid write single blinding or double blinding, because you need to actually write who is actually blinded. The participants are blinded, the personnel are blinded, so you need to be specific who is actually blinded. So we will say that there is low risk when the blinding and unlikely that blinding could have been broken, or no blinding or incomplete blinding but outcome is unlikely to be influenced. Okay. When its outcome is unlikely to be influenced, when the outcome is objective assessment, it is by lab measurement, so it is unlikely to be influenced. But when it is a subjective assessment, for example, satisfaction, pain, that is subjective assessment, so it can be influenced without the blinding. So that would lead to high risk. So you have to know whether the outcome is objective or subjective assessment. Blinding of outcome assessment, who assess the outcome, whether the participants or the healthcare providers or the independent assessors, right? Who assess the outcome. So it is similar to the blinding of participants and personnel also. We'll see whether the outcome is likely to be influenced or not likely to be influenced. Incomplete outcome data. This you will be able to see when you look at the flow chart of the study, right? When you look at the consort, okay, when you look at the consort, when you look at the flow chart of the study, you can see the flow from the beginning and at each level of the assessment, whether there are participants missing and why are they missing. So you have to see how much is missing in each group. It is not the overall missing, but missing for each of the intervention and the control group, and for which outcome, because the missing might not be similar for different outcome, right? So you have to see whether the outcome are affected equally or not. Okay, and how much missing is important. Okay, so you have to see whether it's more than 10% or more than 20%, or you have to look whether it is a rare case or common case to see whether it actually deviates the overall results or not. Okay. For selective reporting, it can lead to reporting bias. Okay, when you want to identify selective reporting, you read the methods. You read the results, and you see whether the results were analyzed. Additionally, there are some further analysis on the results and a subgroup analysis of the results, which is not done to all the outcomes, okay, specifically for that result. So that can have a possibility of selective reporting. Why? Because the authors wanted to show that there are difference between the intervention and control. That is selective reporting. Okay. And it's also good to look at the study protocol to see whether they have reported all the intended outcomes. But sometimes in a protocol, it can be a big protocol, and then you have a number of papers. So you can one outcome may be described in one paper in different papers. So you can have a look at all the different papers, whether all the results were reported or not, or whether there are results we are not spelled out in the protocol. We can say it is low risk when the protocol is available and all the pre-specified outcomes of interest reported in a pre-specified way, or the protocol is not available but it is clear that all the pre-specified and expected outcomes are reported. We can say it is high risk when the outcomes are not reported as specified or expected, there is missing, added, subset analysis, unexpected measurements or method. Okay. Outcomes they are reported incompletely, there might be some the risk because especially when they are reported in terms of figures, okay, when they are reported in terms of figures and you cannot extract the data, so they have, you should have some questions why it is it like that, okay. Other sources of bias, for example, crossover designs, okay, crossover designs, they can produce they can have the oh, I will not touch on that yet, right? But in if you have the imprecision, for example, okay, uh, the study is done on a very small number of samples, okay, so that does not include bias. That does not include bias, but it affects the quality of the study, right? Diversity, example, inadequate dosage, unusual population, that is also not considered as bias, right? That is also referring to the quality of the study and the applicability or the usability of the study to the standard practice, right? Other measures of quality, for example, ethical approval, finding this does not come under the sources of bias. All right. Um, we can say that the other sources of bias, it can be high risk when it includes uh, crossover trials because there is a possibility of carryover effect. So you need to see what is the duration between what is the duration for the washout period. Okay, you have to have is there any possibility for the carryover effect to occur, because it depends on the intervention, right? Recruitment bias in cluster randomized trials and non-randomized studies. And if there is any baseline imbalance, because when you perform a study, you will perform an analysis at baseline whether there is baseline imbalance or not. Sometimes the baseline imbalance, or usually the baseline imbalance, are due to the inadequate sequence generation or allocation concealment, but sometimes it can be also unexplained. Block randomization in unblinded trials, because in block randomization we can actually predict the sequence of the participants. Differential diagnosis of activity, symptom-free cases. Okay, symptom-free cases, they might have the disease, but because it does not manifest, so it goes under the control group, whereas it actually should be in the intervention group. So these are the things that might lead into bias that comes under other process of bias. All right, so I'm done with the intervention study. I'll go into the review for observation studies just quickly, because there is no protocol. There is no protocol for review of observational studies, unlike for intervention studies where we have a standard protocol. But for observation studies, there is no standard protocol. So you need to actually see what is the best for your review. Okay. So in a observational studies, the review question is like, what is the cumulative estimates for prevalence and risk factors? Okay, these are the review questions for observation studies, because why? They involve the cross-sectional studies, all right? So in prevalence, often done in the cross-sectional studies, similarly for the risk factors, okay? So these are the types of review for observation studies. So for the review questions, we'll focus on the population and outcomes. Population and outcomes. Why this concept? Because these are the search strategies are based on the concepts, the populations and the outcome. They do not have intervention, they do not have the comparator. So we focus on the population and the outcomes for the search strategy. So the eligibility criteria, the types of studies, the study designs, um, what observation studies that you will include, cross-sectional, case control, cohort, retrospective cohort. So you will outline that in your protocol. Okay? The types of participants and the types of outcome. For this outcome, you need to actually define. how or what you meant by the outcome and how it should be measured. Okay, so this is a search strategy. For the method of searching, you will have to look at the databases in, for example, in PubMed is a good source um, for observation studies because they include all, right? And structure of the search, you will focus on the participants and outcomes. Okay. And then you have the trial selection, similar to the intervention studies. And you have the Prisma flow diagram, yes. But for the observation studies, we'll end up with higher number of records compared to the interventional studies. And you need to do the quality assessment. There is no specific guideline, but there are a number of tools that have been used for assessing the quality in observation studies. You can use the Newcastle Ottawa scale, right? You can use the JPI, Joint and Briggs Institute scale, right? And you do the data extraction, similar to the intervention studies. So these are the for the interventional studies. So the take-home messages for review, either interventional or the observation studies, you have to do a systematic search. You have to apply the prisma. You have to assess the risk of bias, and you have to summarize according to the predetermined criteria. So that's all. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Nohayati, for a very informative talk on the introduction to systematic review and its methodology. Hopefully, it will be beneficial to us all. I think we can open the floor for questions. If you have any questions to Professor Dr. Nohayati, please ask away. I think I can start off with a few questions to Prof. Prof, in systematic review, either in interventional or observational studies, how many articles would be the minimum uh, ideal number of articles you include in the systematic
Well,
review,
when you
and
talk
how many
about
databases?
reviews, all right, when you talk about
Mhm.
reviews, the more number of articles, the better. Okay,
All
where
right.
you are performing only systematic reviews, there are no limit to the number of articles. When you are
What
talking
about the
about a
minimum of
meta-analysis, you need to have a minimum of two per outcome.
two?
Per
Okay.
outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But if reviews alone, no, there is no limit. Of course, it's not one. Of course, it's not two. Right? The higher number, the better. Okay, because
All
when
right.
that you got more number of papers, you are able to get a better conclusion of the
Mm-hmm.
research question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned about a Prospero. Is it compulsory to register in Prospero?
It is highly recommended because
So
when
it's
you
not.
do not register, when you set for publication, usually the
Mm-hmm.
reviewer will ask what is the Prospero registration number,
I
or
see.
did you register your review in any of the registries. But so far Prospero is the biggest registry for protocols.
Let's say you register your study in Prospero, right? Is it going to have a higher chance for your for the publications, or it's it's not the case?
No, it is the ethics actually. It is the
I
ethic of
see.
performing a review. You will register first. Okay, you will register your protocol in a Prospero so that it does not duplicate, so that meaning that you have booked the title, so other people will not do it because completing a review it needs a lot of work as well, right? So we do not want others to duplicate and we produce a similar review. Okay.
I see. I think many of us maybe has some sort of similar questions. You mentioned about scoping review, right? So what's the difference between scoping review and systematic review? Can you please
In scoping review, the
explain
purpose
a
is
little bit
to
more?
identify the gaps. Scoping review
Mm-hmm.
is to identify the gaps. For example, you are not sure of what you want to do, right? So we'll perform a scoping review to identify what is actually needed. What is the gap actually? when we are not clear, we were not clear actually what is the problem in a topic, right? So we'll perform a scoping review and we do the search, and then we identify from all the findings, we identify, oh, this is actually the gap that is needed in the area. Scoping review is like that. Okay. To identify the gap, we will perform a scoping review.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Any other questions?
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Senang.
I'm Zul from Radiology. I want to ask, what's your opinion on systematic reviews of case reports and case series? Does it follow similar steps, and is it doable?
No, we don't call it system. We don't call it systematic review. Okay, for case reports, case series, it is case series. We don't call it a systematic review. Systematic review is because case series are individual patients. It is not for systematic review is a population. So we don't call it a systematic review for a case report or case series. Although it's a collection, where it is a collection of case reports, it's a case series, we don't call it a review.
I have seen in some publication they do in their title they put systematic review of case reports. That's why I was wondering whether it's doable.
Look at the Prospero. In the Prospero, there are a number of reviews. Okay, a number of review that is not considered a true review, right? For example, like uh, for example, like one of the example is like this, okay, and you will reviews that sebab it does not fulfill a review actually, because it is an individual studies. Okay, that's why we do not do a review. We don't call it a review of individual study like that. We call it as case series when we want to actually look at a number of patients, a number of case reports. A
Mhm.
review is on the population because we want to refer the results to the population. That is the purpose.
Okay, Prof. Thank you.
Sebab when you do on case reports, you cannot fulfill the criteria of systematic review, kan? You cannot, there is no what data extraction that you need to perform, what methods that you need to look at, many things in the quality assessment does not fulfill the requirement for systematic review. Okay, you need to assess the quality. You can assess the quality because it's not a review. It is just a case report. Faham tak? Kan when we assess the quality, we look into the methodology of a study. So it has to be a proper study.
Okay, Prof.
Prof, I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
You spoke about open science framework. Is it if I register in open science framework, do I still need to register in Prospero, or is it either or?
Apa open science framework?
Uh, because like Prospero, it's difficult to register now because they focus on COVID-19, and I found
Taklah,
this.
senang je.
Huh?
Senang. Prospero senang. You
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
register
Prospero is very easy nowadays.
3 weeks, dia akan nampak dia punya protokol tu publish dah dalam Prospero.
Dia
Dia
tak
memang
review pun
tulis
nowadays.
focusing on COVID-19, tetapi sama je, you akan dapat dia punya results tu, you can get all your ID.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay. Thank you.
In fact, you akan dapat the registration number within 10 days automatic. Dia tak buat
Ya,
review dah
betul.
nowadays. Because of
Sekejap
the
je.
COVID.
Because this is the biggest registry for systematic reviews.
So any more questions? Prof, I have one question from Sadia Farhana. Uh, she asks, may I know what is settings in the type of participants?
Setting of type of participants, for example, where do you want to assess, where do you want the population, whether it's from the community, whether you want from the hospitals, that is settings. Okay, the place. Sometimes you want to do a community based study, kan? Contohnya you nak buat effectiveness of intervention with regards to quit smoking, with regards to smoking, kan, something like that. But it is a community based, so the setting is a community based. It is not from the hospital. Sebab when you get the prevalence, for example, the prevalence in community and the prevalence in hospital based is different, right? For example, you're looking into the a review of prevalence lah, for example, in this case, kan. So the prevalence is different. So because the setting is different, that's why you need to actually with with regards to prevalence, you have to, you nak start kat mana? Community ke, you nak ambil ke di community or hospital based. Interventional pun sama, tapi interventional study is more controlled, kan? Bila it is more controlled, it is more focus. You can also include all, sebab in RCT it is more focused, and when you include both the interventional and you include from both the community and hospital, you can still compare, and even the setting can be one of the subgroups in the analysis. Sebab it is controlled condition for RCTs.
I have there's another question from Hazrin Effendi. Assalamualaikum Prof. Untuk bidang forensik boleh guna Prospero?
Forensic, what do you want to study actually? If you want to study, if it fulfills the criteria, yes, you can go ahead. It
He
fulfills the
says
criteria, meaning that
forensic.
dia memang ada individual study. Saya tak tahulah study in forensic macam mana kan. I'm not sure how is the studies in forensic. Whether, I don't know. It seems unlikely that we do it on population. I don't know. Okay. But if the included studies are studies, the included studies are not case reports, and then it is okay. Meaning they have the methods and so on. And you said the methods, you have the designs, you have the sample size, you have the data collection, you have the analysis, and that include methods.
Any more questions? Kalau tak ada, kita proceed. Thank you so much again, Professor Dr. Nohayati. Next, let us welcome our second speaker today, Puan Azura, to give a talk on the literature search strategies for systematic review. Please welcome Puan Azura.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zulkifli. Let me share my slide first. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. I'm Nur Azura Makroni, Senior Librarian from Reference and Research Support Services Pustakaan Hamdan Tahir. And with me today, Puan Nuraida Hassan, our co-facilitator. If you have any question to ask, you may write down in the chat box. She will answer your question. Okay, for the session here, literature search strategy for systematic review. So let me start with the steps of a systematic review and meta-analysis. Okay, we have 9 steps here. We have defined the question, plan eligibility criteria, plan methods, search for studies, apply eligibility criteria, collect data, assess studies for risk of bias, analyze and present results, and the last step is interpret results and draw conclusions. But for this session, we just focusing on search for studies. Okay, a rigorous approach to searching. Okay, as you can see in the slide, systematic reviews of interventions require a thorough, objective, and reproducible search of a range of sources to identify as many relevant studies as possible. Okay, this is a major factor in distinguishing systematic reviews from traditional narrative reviews and helps to minimize bias and therefore assist in achieving reliable estimates of effects. Okay, before I proceed with the next point, is it my sound clear? Semua orang boleh dengar ke? Jelas?
Boleh tapi dia pecah-pecah sikit, right?
Slide not moving?
It's like okay.
Suara
Okay.
pecah-pecah, Prof. Doktor. Doktor ke?
Pecah-pecah Saya cuba kuatkan sedikit. Okay, clear? Okay. A search of Medline alone is not considered adequate. So a systematic review showed that only 30% to 80% of all non-published randomized trials were identifiable using Medline. So a limited search, you may find an incomplete results that would be unrepresentative set of studies and prone for selection bias. Studies that are easily accessed with positive findings that are more likely to be published and indexed in where we can find them. So therefore, it will reducing generalizability. Okay, and then need to have a balance between sensitivity or thoroughness of the search with efficiency in use of time and funds. Okay, by having said that, you need to start where you expect to find the most relevant studies. Okay. Okay, as you can see here in the slide, it's just like you can imagine fishing for information. Okay. However, searching for a systematic review is not like this. Man with his fishing rod, fishing in one particular spot, on one particular river, and targeting one fish at a time. Okay. Rather, your search needs to be on a much larger scale. You can use here, in these photos, fishing trawler. Okay, we'll need to search in a number of different locations, thoroughly searching for all the information that meets our eligibility criteria. This might mean that we pull out more irrelevant material, which we have to throw back in, but it will also reduce our chance of missing something important. Okay, we should change from one target to be more large scale to get all the information gathered. Okay. And sources to search. Okay, we can have various types of sources. Okay, in the bibliographic databases, there are 3 bibliographic databases generally considered to be the most important sources to search for reports of trials. Okay, we have Central, Medline, and Embase. Okay, of all the bibliographic databases, the most important and first place to search is in the Central. Okay, it was developed by the Cochrane collaboration, which consists of comprehensive database or register of reports of controlled trials. Okay, that is in the Central. Medline is available on subscription base, okay, from a number of online database vendors such as EBSCO or VIC. But sometimes you also can have in the PubMed, but not in a large amount. Okay. And then Embase, which is launched by Elsevier, is also only available by subscription. National and regional databases are databases that concentrate on the literature produced in those regions only, and which often include journals and other literature not indexed elsewhere. For example, as you can see, such as in African Index Medicus or Western Pacific Region Index Medicus. And other sources that you can refer here, you can have hand searching involves a manual page-by-page examination of journal issue or conference proceedings to identify all eligible reports of trials. Okay, it may appear in articles, abstracts, news columns, editorial letters, and so on. It can be useful for at least two reasons. Okay, not all trial reports are included in electronic bibliographic databases. Even when they are included, they may not contain relevant search terms in the title or abstract, or be indexed with terms that allow them to be easily identified as trials. Okay, this was especially the case for articles published before 1991, when there was no indexing terms for randomized trials in Medline. And for those articles that are in parts of journals such as supplements and conference abstract, which are not routinely indexed in databases such as Medline. Okay, so Cochrane Central Register of Controlled Trials here, you can access via the Cochrane Library. Okay, for your information, in Malaysia, National Institute of Health already subscribed to this database. So we can access to this database because it's a nationwide access. Okay. So Central is accessed via the Cochrane Library, just like Cochrane Reviews, and is updated quarterly. Central contains nearly 2 million reports of trials, of which 765,000 trial reports are from Medline and 670,000 trial reports from Embase, and remaining 500,000 from other sources. Okay. And it also includes citations published in many languages and citations that are available only in conference proceedings or other sources that are difficult to access. It also includes records from trial registers and trial results registers. Okay, now Medline and Embase. Okay, what's already included in Central? So once you have Central, you can then move on to the other major databases. Okay, studies from Medline and Embase should always be included in your review, but it's important not to duplicate the searching that has already been done. Okay, many of the trials from Medline and Embase have already been found and included in Central. Okay. So thanks to comprehensive searches that are regularly run by the Cochrane collaboration, and they may also be included in your CRG specialized register, okay, Cochrane review groups. Okay, currently Central updated Medline daily and Embase updated by Cochrane Crowd. Now it depends on the Cochrane review groups, but probably most would find it not necessary anymore to search in Medline and Embase. So previously for Medline, all records indexed as RCTs and controlled clinical trials back to 1966, updated by Central quarterly. For Embase, it's back to 1980 with some records from 1974 until 1979 and updated by Central annually, okay, meaning that the latest 3-month record in Medline and 1-year record in Embase are not available in Central. So you must avoid any duplications from these databases. Okay, and other bibliographic databases that you can refer here, you can search some of the many other databases available depending on the topic of your review, the access you have, and the available time and resources that you have. Okay, these are some examples of the main databases available. So each database has different search interfaces and different indexing terms or keywords. So if you are searching this yourself, you may ask your librarians to advise you how to access this database. Okay, now identifying systematic reviews. Okay. Systematic reviews as a source of primary studies. Okay, published systematic reviews are a useful source of information about the primary studies they include. They can provide context or rationale for your own review and should also be referred to in the discussion session. Okay, and then the previous systematic reviews are especially useful as they provide information about the search strategy used, which may inform your own review. Okay, there are sources available to help you to look specifically for reviews and guidelines, such as in the Cochrane Library, PubMed, Epistemonicus, and Prospero. Other potential sources that you can have here, some conference abstracts and proceedings are indexed in bibliographic databases, such as Embase, although not in Medline, and may also be found on websites and in print. They are important to consider as over half of trials reported at conferences never make it to full publication. Sometimes they just have a presentation in the conference but not published in a full. Okay, other published reviews and guidelines are also a useful source of information about individual studies, especially systematic reviews. And then reference lists of reviews or individual included studies are useful places to look for other relevant studies. You can also use your included studies to track citations forward in time using databases like Web of Science and Scopus. Finding later articles that cited those you have already found, or use the features available in some databases to find related articles. Remember that if you are including extra study designs in your review to look for particular kinds of evidence, such as studies looking at adverse effects or health economic studies, you may need to consider additional sources that may be appropriate for those kinds of studies, such as data collected by governments on adverse effects of drugs or specialized databases focusing on health economics. Okay, and then hand searching. Hand searching is the process of going through each issue of a journal or conference proceedings, browse page by page, to identify studies for inclusion in a review. So remember that over 3,000 journals have already been or are being hand searched by the Cochrane collaboration, and these results included in Central. So be sure you are not duplicating this effort. And then there are some web search engines that aim to identify research literature, such as Google Scholar and Trip. Okay, Trip turning research into practice. This also subscription based, which may be useful. There's little evidence to indicate that broader web searching using general search engines such as ordinary Google is useful, although it might be worthwhile looking at more targeted websites depending on your topic. Now we move on to the searching strategy. This is our main topic here for today. First of all, structure of a search strategy. Okay, this is based on your eligibility criteria. Okay, and start with the 2 or 3 more important concepts and focus on those most likely to be found in title abstract. So here you can extract your topics into a PICO format. Okay. So going back to the PICO format, which we use to map out the question for the review. We use some of the same components to design our search. Okay, to run a good search, you must focus on the 2 or 3 most important concepts for your topic. Okay, most search strategies will include 3 concepts, which are participants, interventions, and the last one is study design. Okay, in most cases, the comparison and outcomes will not be used in a search strategy because they are often not well described in the title or abstract of a paper and not well indexed in bibliographic databases. And the more different concepts we include in the search, the fewer studies we will find, and the greater the risk that we will exclude something relevant to our review. So best is to keep it simple. There are exceptions to these general rules, okay, for the PICOs. When the population is not clearly defined, for example, community-wide interventions for increasing physical activity. So the P is for the general public. And the I is physical activity. And the most appropriate concept for such terms. So when the intervention can be used for more than one different purpose, for example, HRT for cognitive function in postmenopausal women. So we add the O for cognitive function. Okay. After we break down into concepts, then we turning concepts into search terms. Okay. We want our search to be as sensitive or extensive as possible. So finding all the relevant studies, with thinking of our search terms, we need to think of all the possible ways that our concept of interest might be described. Okay, that way, we minimize the risk of missing a study because it uses different terminology or express the concept in a different way. Using a broad range of terms that could describe the concept will reduce the precision of our search. We increase the risk of finding irrelevant studies. And then we have to balance the risk of missing something with the cost of having to screen through more search results. So to make sure we are as thorough as possible in including all the ways our concepts can be expressed, we use 2 different types of search terms here. So text words are used by authors and appear in the titles and or abstracts of a publication. And controlled vocabulary or subject headings. These one are very defined terms that are applied by the database indexers to describe the topics mentioned in the record. So you can work with a librarian to identify appropriate search terms and some preliminary tests. Searching may help you with this to make sure your search is precise. Okay. Okay, now we move on to the text words. Okay. The text words is the aim to pick up all the different ways the concept might appear in the literature. Okay, the more variants you use, the more potentially relevant records you will find. Okay, truncate. Okay, to shorten by cutting off a part. Okay, as you can see here in the slide. Okay, when you search the words in the title and or abstract of the record, you may include synonyms or related terms, opposites, international terms, alternative spellings, and plurals. For example, here, brain injury, head injury, or skull fracture. So you can use this synonym. Okay, and then you can use variations of words. You can use truncation and wildcard. You can see the symbol here, asterisk, dollar sign, or question mark symbol here. For example, you search for the word protect. Okay, after T here, you put asterisk. So the result will show you protect with S or protective or protection. Okay, this is the function of truncation. But beware for the car, when you put asterisk after R, the result will show you cars, or sometimes it also will show you carcinoma. Okay. And then wildcard also can be used for the spelling. Okay, for example, for the word color, okay, in terms of British or American spelling, color, you can put COL and then question mark and then R. So the result will show you with color, COLOR, or color, COLOUR. That one in terms of spelling, British or American words. And then here, proximity apparatus, near, next, and adjective, adjacent. Okay, for example, liver adjacent 3 cancer. So it will give you the result liver cancer or liver and bowel cancer. So it will give you in this phrase adjacent cancer in this word. Okay. And then syntax must be translated for each interface. So the way these tools are used can be different according to the interface or service provider you are using to access a database. So this text word or these searching techniques you may apply on not all databases. It depends on that platform itself whether it can read the symbol or not. You may try it. If the database cannot read the symbol, you have to spell out fully in a search box. Okay, now we move on to the control vocabulary. Control vocabulary are standardized subject terms assigned by indexer in a database. Okay. So control vocabulary search terms format line. We have mesh here, medical subject heading, and in Embase, we have M3. Okay. They are useful because different words may be used to describe the same concept and they can provide information beyond that, which is simply contained in the words of the title and abstract. However, the extent to which subject terms are applied to references should be viewed with caution because indexers are not always experts in the subject areas or methodological aspects of the articles that they are indexing, and authors may not describe their methods or objectives well. And sometimes the indexing terms might not correspond to the terms we wish to use. So how to identify control vocabulary terms? You can retrieve articles from the database that meet the inclusion criteria for the review. and notes the common text words and the subject terms the indexers have applied to the articles. You can use them for a full search. Okay, study design filters. Okay, while you are thinking of all the possible ways to describe your main concepts, such as your population and intervention, you will be pleased to know that you don't have to do the same thing for your study design. Librarians and researchers have already done this for you and have developed and published sets of such terms called study design filters that are the most effective way to find particular study designs such as randomized controlled trials. Okay, all you need to do is select the right set of search terms for the database and interface you are using and for the study designs you wish to find for your review. And don't forget, you should not use a study design filter when searching Central, because Central has already been filtered to include only randomized and quasi-randomized trials. Another reason you might not use a filter is if your review is very broad, okay, including a wide range of study designs, in which case it may not be helpful to try to include a filter to capture all your designs of interest. Okay, how about Boolean operators? Okay, we have Boolean operators and or not. Okay, so we have our major concept here. For example, in this sample here, our population, our intervention, and our study design here, we have listed all the different ways we can think of to describe them. So how do we bring these concepts together? There are two main Boolean operators or words we can use in a search strategy to bring them together. The first one is or, okay? If we say we want to search for records that contain the word bicycle or the word helmet, okay? This makes our search broader. It will find any record that has one or the other word. You can say or is small, so it will give you a lot of result here because it will search for the word bicycle or the word helmet. Okay. Alternatively, we can use and here. Okay. If we say we want to find records that contain bicycle and helmet, we want to combine these two search terms together. Okay. Each record found must have both of those words. This will narrow down your search results. So to bring all our search terms together, we need to use a combination of both and or. Now we want to bring it all together. Okay. So in this three box, population, intervention, and study design, these are three concepts here. Okay. So bicycle with a street here, or cycling, or cyclist, or bicycling is under one concept here under population. Okay. So the word here, bicycling is a mesh word. Okay, mesh terms, medical subject heading here, bicycling. Okay. And then we use and here to combine the concept here. So we under the second concept intervention, we have helmet with asterisk here or So here is to expand search within one concept. Okay, so under population, we have bicycle or cycling, meaning that under one concept, we can use or. Okay, to combine between the concept, we can use and. Okay, so helmet or head protective devices, and then we combine to another concept, study design, we use and here. So we combine with RCT. Within each concept, we have a list of alternative terms for the same thing. Okay, for our review of bike helmets, we have a group of terms around our population, cyclists, a group of terms around our intervention, helmets, and our filter terms to identify RCTs. Okay, so within our population concept, we want each record to have at least one of the term listed, okay, from this word, this search term. Okay. So we use the Boolean operator OR to join together our set of synonyms and subject terms because we only need the record to have at least one of the relevant terms for that concept. So using OR to combine terms widen the search to make sure we don't miss any relevant records. Okay. We do the same for the intervention terms and within the study design filter. So once we group together our set of terms for each concept, we join them all together using the Boolean operator here AND. Because we want each record to have every concept, at least one term from every set. So using AND narrows the search, excluding the records that don't have all three of our concepts. Okay, this is the function of Boolean operators. Okay, from here, what we hope to find are those records that have the right population and the right intervention and the right study design without missing any, or not just those that have one or two of the right concepts, like RCTs about bicycles or editorials about bike helmets. So those records where all three concepts overlap in the middle are the ones that are relevant to the review and the ones we want to retrieve. So this is what we want here. Okay. In terms of limits and restrictions, okay. So limiting your search to studies published in English risk introducing bias as trials with positive results are more likely to be published in the major international journals, which are often published in English. So to avoid bias, do not limit by language. Okay. So don't forget that even if you don't add any language limits to your search, if you only search databases that are primarily in English, you will miss much of the non-English literature. So think about including some of the national and regional databases in other languages. And then do not limit by year. Okay, restriction by year should be avoided unless there is a clear time period during which relevant studies might be found. For example, if the intervention was invented in a particular year. So do not limit by year and then also by format. Okay, remember that important information about studies may be published in letters and commentaries, including information about new studies not published elsewhere. Also, important concerns about previously published studies, such as errors or fraudulent data may first be published as comments. So avoid these 3 points here. Do not limit by language, year, and format. Okay. Now we move on to the database. Here we have Cochrane Library. As I said just now, Cochrane Library subscribed by National Institute of Health, so you can access anywhere and anytime because it's a nationwide access. Okay, to access Cochrane Library, you can go to our library homepage and under databases, resources databases, you can search for Cochrane Library. Or if you are outside the campus, you can go to off-campus login via Open Actors and then in a search box, or you can browse through the list of our subscription and look at for Cochrane Library. Okay. So in the search tab, use the drop-down menu selection to easily limit searches to field such as author or abstract. So here, we advise you to use advanced search here. Okay, advanced search. Okay, it will give you a precise result. Okay, use advanced search, click here. And then in this page, advanced search, you can have access point here. Okay, in this search tab, search for title abstract keyword. Okay, choose that one. So it also, you can support using a common search syntax by using boolean operators, proximity operators, near, next, and truncation. Okay. And for your information, if you want to view your saved searches, you must create account first. It's a free account. You can create on your own. Okay. Okay. In a button search limit, in advanced search page here, you can limit according to the content type. Okay, you also can limit to Cochrane Library publication dates. Okay, the search date limit applies to all Cochrane content types here. And then under central trials, only original publication year. To limit to the original publication year, first select trials as a content type. And then search words variations here. Word variations will be searched by default in the search tab, but can be turned off by unchecking the box here. Okay. Under Cochrane Library, in the advanced search, you can use Search Manager. Okay, to begin the search, you must use Search Manager and there you can click this box as to choose access point, whether you want that search term appear in what field. Okay. Okay, for example here, so you can, after you search, you click that S and then it will appear access point that you can choose. So you must choose title abstract. Okay. And the first box after you search, okay, the first box, you can combine the search in this box, okay, using Boolean operators. Okay, and then it will appear here. And when you scroll down a little bit, you can see the result here. Okay, the result here. So you can search and search again, and then you can have this box, and then in from this box you can combine the search. Okay. So this is the number of the result for your search for each box. Okay. So to view the result, you can click this number box here. Okay. So add or remove lines from your search, including inserting a new line at the beginning, and then use the search slide out to easily choose fields via menu selections. Okay, you can use the mesh slide out to perform a mesh search directly within the search manager, and use the filter button to open the search limits module. Okay, here. And you can view the results, and you also can save the search and access your saved search. Okay, after your search, you can see the result here. You can filter your result. You also can export selected citations from your result. You can view preview of the article here of your result, and you also can have clinical answers, and you can choose result per page, how many here. Okay. In the filters, you can filter according to the dates. Okay, you can filter according to the date article. Okay, you can filter your result according to the date. Okay, date article was published online or added to the Cochrane library. And also according to the status. Okay, filters by events that have affected by the review. And in terms of type, used to identify the type of question addressed by the review. And language identifies when translations for contents are available. And topic, to limit results based on Cochrane supplied topics. So here, this is your result here. You can combine your search result. And then you can limit here. You also can search according to the medical subject heading here. Just put the search term here. And you can limit. And then you also can view the result according to this number. And then you can save this search results. Okay, this search terms result here. You can save, and then you can view your saved searches. This one you need to create account to view your saved searches. Okay. To view saved searches, you must create an account in Cochrane Library. Okay. In your account, you can have a features here. Email alerts will send email when articles are retrieved by your search. Okay, and then will run the selected safe search strategy. And function add to search will add the lines of your safe search strategy to any current lines in the search manager. And then share will allow you to copy a URL link. Sorry, can you hear me clearly? Boleh dengar tak? Atau putus-putus?
Boleh dengar jelas-jelas.
Jelas Okay. I will continue. And share will allow you to copy a URL link to the search or to send a link directly by email. And then export function here will create a text file of your search strategy. Okay, this is how to search medical terms using medical terms mesh subject heading. Medical subject heading using this tab here. So you can search here, for example, here you search for acetaminophen. So it will suggest you the exact term mesh here. So you can use this search term. And then you also can view the mesh trees here. And then you can search. Okay, now we move on to the clinical trials, central. So this one also a part of in Cochrane Library. So here I want to highlight because I frequently have some of our students ask us to find full text for the central from the central. So I want to highlight here that central records will often include an abstract only, a summary of the article. So they do not contain the full text of the articles. Okay, records are included irrespective of language or date of publication. So in the central, they do not have full text. Okay. Okay, so here under Cochrane Library, you can have trials here. Okay, and then you can search for trials for the central here. Okay, so the result will appear here. Other than that, you also can search in the epistemonicus. Okay, it's already linked to this central epistemonicus, another database that you can search for systematic review. And the latest added in this central also has been linked here is health systems evidence and social systems evidence. Okay, these two databases here, you also can search for systematic reviews. Health system evidence is a continually updated repository of synthesis of research evidence about governance, financial and delivery arrangement within health systems, and about implementation strategies that can support change in health systems. So here it has over 14,000 results if you can search here. Actually, these two databases is from McMaster Health Forums repositories. Another one is social systems evidence. It also can support for such systematic reviews. It also has over 44,000 contents here. Okay, but the well-known database for systematic reviews Epistemonicus. So to search in Epistemonicus, you can go to this database center or you can search on its own platform. Okay. So Epistemonicus is already linked here under central here. You can click more Epistemonicus, or if you can keep it smaller, your page, you can see the full content here, then it will be Epistemonicus there. Okay, this is Epistemonicus website itself. You can have this URL later, epistemonicus.org. Okay, you can search. It combines the best of evidence-based healthcare, information technologies, and a network of experts to provide a unique tool for people making decisions concerning clinical or health policy questions. So this Epistemonicus was founded by Gabriel Rada and Daniel Perez. So Epistemonicus is from a Greek word by Aristotle, meaning what is worth knowing. Okay, so many institutions and hundreds of collaborators are involved in different aspects, and most of them contribute without an economic retribution. It's maintained by Epistemologos Foundation. It's a non-profit organization based in Santiago, Chile. So you can search in Epistemologos. Here, you can have a general search here. For example, here fever, and then you can have a result here. So you also can filter according to the category, year, and so on. And then besides general search, it also has advanced search here. So in advanced search, you can combine your search term here, okay, using Boolean operators. And you also can combine between the concepts here. So you can choose here, the access point is title or abstract. It's more concise to search, okay? And then this is the results. So you can filter here on your left. Okay, so here you can see under this result, you can have more details. For example, here is already mentioned this article is included into systematic reviews. And if you want to preview, you can click here. Okay, and then this is all about systematic reviews regarding this article. And then we move on to the free platform, PubMed. Okay. So under PubMed, you can use advanced search. Okay, so here, this is your advanced search page. You can use access point here. You can choose title or abstract. Okay, you can use you can combine and you can use Boolean operators to search the term. Okay, here in advanced search, okay, you can choose title abstract, search, and then you can add, and then you can see the result here, down here. This is the result. For each search term, every time you search, it will give you a result, and then you have to go back to add another search term. Okay, this is your result. You have to do it one by one. Okay, and then to combine, you must key in the number with the hashtag here manually. Okay, to combine your search result here, you have to do it manually. Okay, this is the number of your result for each search. So this total number when you combine the result here. So it's more specific. So you will get a less result here. Easier for you to focus on your research topic. And the last part is managing, documenting, and reporting the search. Okay, after we did search strategy, now we move on to the last part, managing, documenting, and reporting the search. Okay, managing your search results. When your search is complete, you will have the exported result from each database, often in the form of a text file. So make sure you export as much information as is available. Although you can work directly with the text files, if your search is small and manageable, reference management software is a good way to organize your search results. Okay, if your librarian is running your search, we may send you a text file or reference management software files. So we may put the references directly into the software format itself for you to review. Okay. So you also can use whichever software package available to manage your search results. Okay, so here we have various types of reference management software, but it based on subscription or not. Okay, so right now we have Mendeley Reference Manager in USM. For those who has EndNote before, you still can continue use EndNote. Okay, but it's a subscription based. Okay, so okay, and then documenting the search. It's very important to document everything that you search. Okay, so you must have a well documented at every stage. You will need to report the search in detail in the review so that your readers can see what has been done to find all the relevant studies. Not only that, but you will yourself need to know what has been done so that you can keep track of all your results during the review process and update the search in future. So you will need to keep records of what database was searched, using which interface, for example, Medline, where you got it, whether in Ovid or in PubMed. So the dates on which the search was conducted, including a single date on which the whole search process can be said to be complete. Usually the date on which the first source was searched, any date limit set on the search strategies used, best to copy and paste this to avoid errors and the numbers retrieved. You also can, sorry. You also can save your search strategies on main databases, but make sure you keep copies of everything locally as well, because you never know when a database might be closed down, a website move, or your access rights change. This applies to search results and individual documents found on the internet, especially because it's always keep changing. So finally, don't forget to record non-database search activities such as contacting experts and reference list searching. Okay, the last part is reporting the search in your review. To clarify the specifics of what should be reported, where in your review, at the protocol stage, you will need to list all the sources you plan to search and any limits you plan to use. And then don't forget to include all sources, not just electronic databases, including reference and citation checking, web searches, and people you plan to contact. Everything must be reported, and you will get feedback from your Cochrane information specialist about this process, protocol publication process. And for your final review, expect to have to report your search in high level of details. So you will need to report the sources searches, search databases and interface, dates and limits, and the numbers found for each source, ideally in the form of a Prisma flowchart based on the Prisma guidelines for good reporting of systematic reviews. This one has been explained by Prof. Yati in a last session. So to sum up, okay, you must plan a systematic search and balancing sensitivity and efficiency of your search. And you can start your search with Central, Medline, and Embase, trials, registers, and then consider other appropriate sources. And then think about the key concepts of your question and how they might be described. Search strategy must be translated for every database interface, and you must organize it accordingly, and then set up a system to manage your results and keep careful records by using reference management software. So these are references for these presentations. So I think that's all for these sessions. Any question to ask?
Thank you so much, Puan Azura, for a very insightful talk on the literature search strategy for systematic review just now. So I open the floor for questions. Any questions?
I see no question in
May-
the chat box, Doctor.
Maybe I can
Yes,
start
okay.
the questions here. Puan Azura, you mentioned of using text word synonym and opposite to search the articles, right? How
Yeah.
do you how do you use these words as they convey different meanings? Is it the same a single search or a different search, or are you using a Boolean operators to distinguish these search
Uh,
terms?
to use these search terms with synonym terms, you can use or. Okay, Boolean operators in
No,
a
no.
search.
All right. What I mean is text word synonym and opposite, right? Do you use these both in the same search, or do you use different search? If it's the same search, do you use Boolean operators to distinguish this? You get what I mean?
Let me show you in the slide here. You mean this
The
one,
text
right?
words. No, a previous one, I think.
This one.
Before you mentioned about using
Text
synonym
word.
and opposite. This
Yeah.
one, yeah, text word.
Yeah.
Yeah, include synonyms, related terms, opposite. So synonym and opposite, they convey a different meanings, right? So do
Uh,
you use these two terms in one search, a single search, or are you using a different?
in a one search.
I see. How do you use that? Are you using? Do you
You
use a
can
Boolean
use the
operators?
word or.
I see. So
For the
like,
synonyms, you can use and for the opposite,
mhm,
you can use or.
I see. All right. Okay, thank you.
Or
Any more
Puan
questions?
Aida can add my answer.
Actually, for the synonym, you can use or, and for the opposite, you can use
Oh,
and. Actually,
vice versa.
I
vice
see.
versa.
All right. Okay. Synonym you use or, and then opposite you use and. And I have a question from Tan Swat Cheng. If necessary, can researcher from USM kindly request help from USM librarian for the search? Sometimes we cannot retrieve articles in certain journal as USM has no subscription to the journal.
Mm, can request help for it. Yes, you can request from us. You can email to rujukan phd@usm.my. If we don't subscribe to that journal, we will request from other university libraries that subscribe to. But if they also can't supply that article, for postgraduate academics, we have a special service for you. We have pay-per-view service where we will buy that article and library will bear the cost. It's free for you.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Am I
Uh,
answered the question? Dr. Zul? Am I answered the question? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome.
Any more question? I think there's someone.
yes, Dr. Zul. I want to know the difference between the Medline and PubMed, actually. How do they differ?
Medline and PubMed. Right.
Yes.
So Medline is a part of PubMed. PubMed is we can consider as a search engine that gather all the information from the Medline and other databases.
So can we directly say that if we search using PubMed, we have searched Medline? Is this true?
Yes. But as we know that PubMeds are free, so it's not covered full the content in the Medline. Might be there will be embargo articles that not published yet in the Medline, but it's published in the Medline, subscribed in the EBSCO host or Orbit. But regret to inform that USM does not subscribe to EBSCO and Orbit.
We don't have the subscription, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
the alternative way is you can have articles from the Medline to the PubMed only right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome. Okay, any more question?
Any more questions? If there's no more questions, I think we can conclude our
So
workshop
if
today.
you have any more question to ask later, you may email us. Okay, you can email me. Oh, no email here. You can email me azurah@usm.my or naraidahas@usm.my, or you can walk into our reference counter level 1. Level 1, Perpustakaan Hamdan Tahir. Okay, that's all, Doctor.
Okay, thank you so much, Puan Azura. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today in the second Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis Workshop 2022. We truly appreciate it. On behalf of the organizing committees and Department of Medical Microbiology and Parasitology, I would like to apologize if you have done any mistakes and inconvenient caused throughout the event. Assalamualaikum and see you again, inshallah.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye.